AITA for refusing to speak to my father after he gave away our family farm to my sister who never wanted it? I, 41M, need to write this all out because it's been eating me alive for 31 days, and my wife says I need to either talk to someone or put it into words before I do something I regret. She's right. She usually is. So here it is, the whole thing, and I genuinely want to know, am I the asshole here, or am I watching my family's legacy get bulldozed while everyone tells me to smile about it? I'll start at the beginning because the beginning matters. My grandfather, Harold William Corbin, came home from Korea in 1952 with a Purple Heart, a bad knee, and $4,200 in savings. He bought 120 acres of land in Lynn County, Iowa, rolling farmland about 20 minutes outside Cedar Rapids on Route 30, and he spent the next 40 years turning that dirt into something real. He raised cattle. He grew corn and soybeans. He built a barn with his own hands, the same barn that still stands there today. He used to tell me, when I was barely old enough to understand, Ryan, land is the only thing God isn't making more of. You hold on to it. You hold on to it no matter what. I listened. Maybe that was my mistake. My dad, Dale Corbin, 69, took over the farm in the 80s when Grandpa Harold's health started slipping. Dad never had Grandpa's passion for it, to be honest. He ran it fine, maintained the property, leased some acreage for corn, kept the fences in order, but farming was always more obligation than love for him. Still, he kept it. He held on to it, because that's what Corbins do. Then there's me. I'm the oldest of 2 kids. I work as a farm equipment mechanic at a John Deere dealership here in Cedar Rapids. I make $67,000 a year, which around here is a decent living. Not great. Decent. My wife Tammy drives a school bus for the Linn-Mar district. Together we pull in enough to rent a farmhouse on Route 30, $975 a month, and raise our 3 kids, who are 14, 11, and 7. We don't take vacations. We don't have a boat. The kids wear hand-me-downs and they're fine with it because that's just how it is out here. Now, my sister Ashley is 34. She left Iowa the day after her 18th birthday like the state was on fire. University of Missouri, marketing degree, moved to Kansas City, married a guy named Derek who works in commercial real estate. Derek is 36, wears those slim-fit khakis with no socks and loafers, and talks about passive income streams like it's a religion. Ashley and Derek have a nice condo in the Crossroads district. No kids. 2 rescue dogs named after cocktails, Gimlet and Cosmo. I'm not making that up. For the last 16 years, Ashley visited the farm maybe once a year. Thanksgiving sometimes, Christmas if Derek's family didn't claim them first. Every single time, without fail, she'd spend the weekend complaining. The smell of the cattle lot. The bugs in the summer. The slow Wi-Fi. One Christmas, I remember this so clearly it makes my teeth hurt. She was standing in the kitchen holding a glass of wine while Tammy and I were doing the dishes, and she looked at me and said, "I don't know how you can live like this, Ryan. There's nothing here." I didn't say anything. I just kept scrubbing the casserole pan. Because what do you say to that? Meanwhile, from age 18 to 24, I skipped college entirely to stay on the farm and work full-time alongside Dad. 6 years. I baled hay in July heat that would make your vision go white. I fixed fences in November when the ground was so frozen you'd break a post driver on it. I drove the combine during harvest, 14, sometimes 16-hour days, and at the end of every season, Dad would hand me cash. Maybe $15,000 for the whole year. No benefits. No 401k. No pay stubs. Just cash in an envelope and a handshake and the understanding, the explicit, stated, repeated understanding, that this land would be mine. He said it when I was 15, "This farm is yours, son. You're the one who loves this land." He said it when I was 20, when 2 of my friends from high school were starting careers in Des Moines and I was knee-deep in a drainage ditch. "Stay. This is all going to be yours." He said it when I got married, when Tammy and I were looking at places to rent and I asked if we could build a house on the back 40. "Not yet. But when I'm gone, all of this is yours. Every acre." I believed him. Every time. Every single time. I structured my entire life around those words. I didn't go to college. I didn't leave. I didn't chase anything else. Because my father made me a promise, and I thought a man's promise meant something. Update 1. The accident and the visitors, 6 months ago. 6 months ago, Dad had a quad bike accident on the north end of the property. He was checking fence lines on a Saturday morning, took a slope too fast. He's 69 and shouldn't have been out there alone, I know that now, and the ATV rolled. Broke his hip in 2 places. Surgery. Rehab facility in Marion for 5 weeks. Then home with a walker and a physical therapy schedule and a refrigerator full of casseroles from the church ladies. I was there constantly. 3, 4 times a week after work. I'd mow his lawn, fix whatever needed fixing, sit with him on the porch while he did his PT exercises and complained about the pain. Tammy would bring the kids over on weekends so they could see Grandpa. That's just what you do. He's my father. Then something surprising happened. Ashley started showing up. Not just calling. Showing up. She and Derek drove up from Kansas City, that's a 4-hour drive, every single weekend for about 3 months. At first, I was genuinely happy. I remember telling Tammy on the drive home one night, you know, maybe the accident scared Ashley into realizing Dad's not going to be around forever. Maybe she's finally stepping up. Ashley would cook meals. She'd organize Dad's medications into one of those weekly pill organizers. She'd clean the house, something I'll admit I wasn't great about keeping up with. She seemed different. Softer. More present. I thought we were finally becoming a family again. And Derek? Derek would sit with Dad at the kitchen table, the same oak table my grandfather used to play cards at, where Grandma's coffee ring stains are still visible if you look in the right light, and they'd go over financial planning. I didn't think much of it. Derek works in commercial real estate. Dad is 69 with a broken hip and a farm that honestly does run at a loss most years if you're just counting the crop leases against the property taxes and maintenance. I figured Derek was helping him set up a retirement plan or maybe look into a reverse mortgage or something. I figured it was a good thing. I am an idiot. I say that with full clarity and zero self-pity. I am an idiot. Update 2. The kitchen table conversation, last month. 31 days ago. A Tuesday evening. I drove out to the farm after work because Dad had called and said he needed to talk. His voice sounded strange on the phone. Not sick, not angry, just strange. Heavy. I walked in and he was sitting at the kitchen table. Same table. Same chair he always sits in, the one with the wobbly leg that I've fixed 3 times and he refuses to replace. There was a manila folder in front of him. That should have been my first sign. My father has never owned a manila folder in his life. He asked me to sit down. I sat. He couldn't look at me at first. He was staring at his hands, those big calloused hands that used to throw hay bales like they were pillows, and they were just sitting on the table like dead things. Then he said it. He told me he's transferring the farm. All 120 acres. To Ashley and Derek. I think I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain simply could not process what he was saying. I think I said, "What?" And he said it again. He told me that Derek had drawn up a plan to develop the property. 45 single-family homes. A subdivision. They already had a name picked out, Heritage Meadows. Heritage Meadows. On the land my grandfather bought with Korean War savings. The irony is so thick you could plow it. Derek, my father explained, had investors already lined up. A development company out of Overland Park. The plan was to rezone the agricultural land to residential, subdivide it, and build cookie-cutter 3-bedroom houses selling for $280,000 to $320,000 each. Derek projected a net profit, after development costs, infrastructure, and fees, of somewhere around $4 to $6 million. He showed Dad a spreadsheet. My father, who still balances his checkbook by hand, was shown a spreadsheet and decided to sign away 72 years of family legacy. I asked why. Dad said, and I'm going to try to quote this as close to exactly as I can because these words have been on a loop in my head for 31 days, "Ashley needs this more than you do. You have a job. You have a trade. You'll be fine. Derek knows how to make this land worth something. You think I want to die knowing this farm just sits here losing money year after year? You think I want to leave you a burden? A burden. 120 acres of Iowa farmland, land worth, conservatively, $10,000 to $12,000 an acre, so roughly $1.20 to $1.40 million as raw land, is a burden. I said, Dad, this farm isn't losing money. The land itself is appreciating. Every year. Iowa farmland has done nothing but go up in value for decades. If you need income, we can restructure the lease agreements. We can. He cut me off. Derek explained all of that. The taxes eat up more than the leases bring in, and the maintenance is. Derek doesn't know what he's talking about, I said, and I know I raised my voice because I saw Dad flinch. I didn't mean to, but I was standing now, and my hands were shaking, and I was looking at that manila folder like it was a bomb. Grandpa didn't buy this land so some guy from Kansas City could bulldoze it and build a subdivision called Heritage Meadows, I said. That's when Dad started crying. I want to be clear about something. My father does not cry. I have seen that man bury his own mother, put down horses, and worked through a rotator cuff tear for 6 months without so much as a wet eye. He was sitting there with tears running down his face, and his mouth was open like he wanted to say something, but nothing would come out. I should have stayed. I know that. I should have sat back down and talked it through. But I couldn't. Something in me just broke, like a wire snapping on a fence, that sharp ping you hear before the whole line goes slack. I walked out the door, got in my truck, and drove home. I haven't been back. 31 days. Update 3. What's happened since? The last month has been the worst stretch of my life, and I include the year I lost my mother to cancer when I was 26. Tammy has been incredible. She hasn't pushed me either direction. She just says, when you're ready to figure out next steps, I'm right here. My kids can tell something is wrong. My 14-year-old Nathan flat out asked me last week, "Is Grandpa dying?" I had to sit him down and explain that Grandpa is fine, but we're having a disagreement. Nathan said, "About the farm?" And I said yes, and he just nodded. That kid is too perceptive for his own good. Ashley has called me 4 times. I haven't answered. She sent me a text that said, "Ryan, this doesn't have to be ugly. Derek wants to talk to you about possibly including you in the project. There could be a consulting fee or a share of profits. Call me." A consulting fee. On my own family's land. I screenshot that text and then I stared at it for about 20 minutes in the parking lot of the John Deere dealership while my lunch break expired, and I didn't care. 2 of my buddies from work, guys I've wrenched with for 15 years, told me I should talk to a lawyer. Promissory estoppel, one of them said. He'd been Googling. The idea that if someone makes you a promise, and you rely on that promise to your own detriment, like skipping college and working for cash for 6 years, then there could be a legal claim. I called a lawyer in Cedar Rapids. She said the same thing. She said it's a real argument, but it's complicated, expensive, and depends heavily on whether there's any documentation of the promise. I don't have documentation. I have my word and my father's word, which, as it turns out, is worth about as much as a handshake in a hurricane. The lawyer also told me something else. She told me to check if the transfer has actually been executed yet. Because if Dad is transferring the land while alive, it's likely a quitclaim deed or a trust, and if it hasn't been recorded yet, there's still time. She also mentioned looking into whether Derek's influence over a recovering, medicated, post-surgical 69-year-old man could constitute undue influence. She used those words, undue influence, and something in my chest just tightened because I knew she was right. That's exactly what happened. Derek saw an injured old man and a piece of land worth over $1 million, and he went to work. I haven't filed anything yet. That's where I am right now. Standing on the edge, deciding whether I'm going to let this happen or whether I'm going to fight. And then last week, something happened that tipped me over. I was driving home from work on Route 30, the way I always go, which takes me right past the farm. The light was that gold color it gets in late afternoon, the kind of light that makes Iowa look like a painting. And I saw 3 men standing near the barn. One was Derek. I'd know those stupid sockless loafers anywhere, even at a distance. The other 2 were men in suits. Actual suits. In a cattle lot. They were pointing at the barn, gesturing, clearly planning. I slowed down. I couldn't help it. I looked at that barn, the barn my grandfather built, the barn where I carved my initials right next to his initials when I was 9 years old, RC plus HC, still there in the wood, and these 3 men were pointing at it like it was something to be demolished. I pulled over on the shoulder and I sat there for maybe 15 minutes. Then I drove home and told Tammy I want to fight this. Update 4. Starting to fight back. Here's where I am now, and I want to be transparent about everything because I truly want honest opinions. I retained the lawyer. Her name is Sarah. She's out of a firm in Cedar Rapids that handles estate and property disputes, and she is sharp. After I laid everything out, the promises, the 6 years of labor, the timing of Ashley and Derek's sudden involvement, she said she's seen this pattern more times than she can count. Adult child who left comes back when there's money on the table. She didn't sugarcoat it. She said litigation would be expensive, possibly $20,000 to $40,000 if it goes to trial, and there are no guarantees. But she also said I have a stronger case than I think. Here's what we're looking at. First, the unjust enrichment angle. I worked that farm for 6 years at below market wages, roughly $15,000 a year when a comparable farmhand position would have paid $30,000 to $35,000. That's roughly $90,000 to $120,000 in uncompensated labor. Even if I don't get the farm, there's an argument that I'm owed back compensation. Second, the undue influence question. Dad was 69, post-surgical, on pain medication, and emotionally dependent on Ashley and Derek during a vulnerable period. Derek, who has a financial interest in the outcome, was the one presenting financial planning options. Sarah said this is textbook. She's pulling Dad's medical records with his consent, or she'll subpoena them if necessary. Third, and this is the one that made Derek's phone calls to me stop real fast, the rezoning. Derek's entire plan depends on rezoning 120 acres of agricultural land to residential. That requires approval from the Lynn County Board of Supervisors. It requires environmental impact studies. It requires public comment periods. And here's the thing about Iowa, farm preservation is not a joke out here. There are organizations, advocacy groups, state programs, and a whole lot of angry neighbors who do not want 45 houses with tiny yards and HOA rules plopped down in the middle of working agricultural land. Sarah has already connected me with an agricultural preservation nonprofit, and they're very interested. Fourth, and this is the part Ashley doesn't know about yet, Sarah found out that the property transfer hasn't been recorded. The deed hasn't been filed. Which means legally, right now, it's still Dad's farm. There's a window here, and it's not going to stay open forever. I wrote Dad a letter. I didn't email it, I didn't text it, I wrote it by hand on lined notebook paper the way he taught me. I told him I love him. I told him I'm not angry at him, I'm angry at what's being done to him. I told him that Derek's projected profits are built on destroying something that can never be rebuilt. I told him that Iowa farmland has appreciated an average of 5 to 7% per year over the last 2 decades, which means just holding on to it is a better financial strategy than anything Derek's spreadsheet could show. I told him that if he needs income, I'll help him restructure the lease agreements, bring in better tenants, maybe even set up a hunting lease on the timber acres which can bring in $15,000 to $20,000 a year on its own. I mailed that letter 5 days ago. 3 days ago, Dad called. I almost didn't answer. But I did. He was quiet for a long time and then he said, I got your letter. And then he said, I didn't know about the hunting leases. And then, after another long pause, he said, Derek told me the land was depreciating. Derek told a 69-year-old man that Iowa farmland was depreciating. Iowa farmland, which has done nothing but increase in value for over 20 years. I don't know if Derek is ignorant or if he lied on purpose, but either way, my father made a decision about the most valuable thing he owns based on information that is objectively, verifiably false. Dad hasn't signed the final deed transfer yet. He told me that. He said Derek has been pressuring him to sign before the investor window closes. That language, investor window closes, doesn't come from a 69-year-old farmer. That's Derek's language. That's sales pressure. And Sarah says that pressure, combined with the medical vulnerability, is exactly the kind of evidence that supports an undue influence claim. Update 5. Where things stand right now. As of today, here is the situation. The deed has not been transferred. Dad has agreed to pause everything for 60 days while he thinks it over. That was not something he came to on his own. I believe it's because my letter laid out the financial reality that Derek had deliberately obscured. Sarah sent a formal letter to Derek's attorney. Oh yes, Derek has an attorney now, some guy from Overland Park, putting them on notice that any attempt to complete the transfer during this period could be subject to legal challenge on the grounds of undue influence and unjust enrichment. Derek called me the day after that letter landed. The conversation lasted about 90 seconds. He said, You're making a mistake, Ryan. This deal would have made your dad a wealthy man. You're letting sentimentality cloud your judgment. I said, Derek, that man is already sitting on $1.4 million worth of land. He is a wealthy man. He just didn't know it because you told him the land was worthless. He hung up. Ashley sent me a long email that I have read probably 20 times. The gist of it was that I'm being selfish, that I'm trying to keep the farm out of some stubborn, nostalgic fantasy, and that Dad deserves to benefit from his own property. She wrote, You spent 6 years driving a tractor around. That doesn't make you the owner. Driving a tractor around. 6 years of my life, reduced to one sentence. I didn't respond. I've been contacted by 3 of the neighboring property owners who got wind of the Heritage Meadows plan. None of them are happy. 2 of them have already submitted formal objections to the county planning board in anticipation of a rezoning request. One of them, a man named Gerald who has farmed the adjacent property for 40 years, told me, I'll go to every board meeting until I'm dead before I let some Kansas City developer put a subdivision next to my cattle operation. Gerald is not a man who says things he doesn't mean. Sarah is now preparing a formal challenge to any future deed transfer. She's also exploring whether the 6 years of below-market labor constitutes an implied contract, meaning even if Dad has every right to do what he wants with his property, he may owe me compensation for the years I worked in reliance on his promise. She's cautiously optimistic but realistic. This could take a year. Maybe longer. And here's the thing that gets me, the thing that keeps me up at night staring at the ceiling while Tammy sleeps next to me. I'm not even sure I want to own the farm at this point. I don't have the money to operate it. I'm a mechanic. My wife drives a school bus. What am I going to do with 120 acres? But the thought of it being paved over, the thought of Derek's crew tearing down that barn, scraping the initials that my grandfather and I carved into the wood together off the face of the earth so they can pour concrete for a cul-de-sac, that thought makes me feel a kind of grief I don't have the vocabulary for. Some of my family thinks I'm being unreasonable. My aunt, Dad's sister, called and said, "It's Dale's land. He can do what he wants with it." And technically, legally, she's not wrong. It is his land. He can sell it, gift it, burn it to the ground if he wants. But does that make it right? Does owning something give you the moral authority to break every promise you ever made about it? Does it erase the 6 years I spent working for almost nothing because I trusted his word? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. That's why I'm here. My wife says I'm not the asshole, but she's biased. My friends at the shop say I'm not the asshole. But Ashley says I'm trying to control something that isn't mine, and Dad, the few times we've spoken, sounds like a man being pulled in two directions by people he loves, and I hate that for him even though he's the one who created this situation. So, Reddit, I need you to be honest with me. Am I the asshole for refusing to speak to my father and fighting the transfer of our family farm, a farm I was promised my entire life, a farm I sacrificed years of my career to maintain, even though it's legally his property and he has every right to do what he wants with it? Or am I the only one in this family who remembers what a promise means? Edit. For the people asking, yes, I do have witnesses to the promises. Tammy heard them multiple times. My uncle heard them. Several family friends heard them at various gatherings over the years. Sarah says witness testimony matters. It's not a signed contract, but it's not nothing either. Edit 2. Thank you all for the responses. I'm reading every single one. Tammy is sitting next to me and she's reading too, and she just said, "See? You're not crazy." I don't feel crazy. I just feel tired. But I also feel like maybe, for the first time in 31 days, I'm not carrying this completely alone. I'll update when I can. TLDR, my dad promised me the family farm, 120 acres, $1.4 million, my entire life. I skipped college and worked it for 6 years for almost nothing. My sister, who moved away and never cared about it, suddenly started visiting after Dad got hurt. Her husband convinced my recovering, medicated father to transfer the farm so he could bulldoze it and build a 45-home subdivision. I found out, walked out, hired a lawyer, and am now fighting it. The deed hasn't been transferred yet. AITA for fighting this, even though it's legally my dad's property?